Good morning, government class. It is Wednesday, April 29th, and hope everyone survived last night's storms in good shape. What we're going to be talking about today, the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Homeland Security, both came about as a result of the September 11th, 2001 attacks, which kind of highlighted the fact that the American security apparatus, the offices and people who work together or are supposed to work together to keep the country safe, a lot of times were kind of in competition with each other. They weren't always working together, didn't always tell each other what they knew, and that we think anyway resulted in some dropped balls that allowed the attacks to take place. So after 9/11, there were some efforts made to bring all of these agencies and people kind of under one roof, so to speak, metaphorically, so that all of their information was coordinated, everyone shared information with everyone else, and there wasn't the kind of infighting or secrecy between groups that kept the country from responding to Al Qaeda the way it should have before 9/11. So the Director of National Intelligence, or DNI, heads the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, established in 2005. The office was born out of the pre 9/11 failure of the government's several intelligence agencies to collect and share information that might have warned of Al Qaeda's coming attacks. The President, with Senate approval, appoints the DNI, who is now the President's chief advisor in all matters relating to intelligence. The DNI supervises the operations of the 16 separate agencies that make up the federal intelligence community and directs the work of the National Counterterrorism Center. Okay, there's problem one right there. There are 16 different agencies that are responsible for collecting intelligence related to United States security. And without that intelligence, you're flying blind. You have no idea what's going on. So you've got these 16 agencies that all have to talk to each other and be coordinated. The NCTC's hundreds of specialists receive and evaluate all information gathered by the intelligence community and relay it to all those who have the quote unquote need to know. As the first DNSI, John Negroponte, put it, our job is to integrate foreign, military, and domestic intelligence in defense of the homeland and of United States interests abroad. Some of the agencies controlled by the DNI are fairly well known, among them the FBI, the DEA, and the CIA. Indeed, for more than half a century, one of them, the Central Intelligence Agency, was, as its title suggests, the government's principal, its central intelligence gathering organization, and people still kind of view the CIA as that. The CIA remains a major cloak and dagger agency, but the DNI now holds its once leading role in the intelligence community. Some of the agencies in the intelligence community are little known, however, including the National Geospatial Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the world's largest spy organization, the National Security Agency. Much of their work involves espionage, spying, and is shrouded in deepest secrecy. Even Congress has generally shied away from more than a passing check on their activities, and their operating funds are disguised at several places in the federal budget each year. So if you look at the federal budget every year, which, by the way, is usually like that thick, it's a huge, huge budget. Um, there's not a line item in the budget that says, this amount of money for spying. You know, John John Smith gets these millions of dollars for spying in Russia. It's all disguised so that no one could look at a budget and say, "Hey, John Smith's getting all this money for spying in Russia. Let's go get him." It has to be hidden that way. Nearly all Americans agree that the work of the several agencies that comprise the intelligence community is absolutely essential to the security of the United States. At the same time, however, it is essential that both the policy-making leaders in the government, that's the Congress, and the American people clearly recognize the potential dangers of a complex of government agencies whose operations are conducted in utmost secrecy. In our time, in 2020, this has led to a lot of what people kind of mutter about as being the deep state and whatnot. Um, but these are career intelligence professionals who spend their entire lives, their working lives, working in espionage, working in intelligence gathering. Um, and yeah, they're kept secret, but again, that's one of those tensions within a free society like the United States, where you recognize the need from just the state of the world to have a secret set of organizations that's collecting information for you, but also you can't let them be too secret or have too much control over what goes on, because in a democratic society, secret organizations like that can be really bad. So, Department of Homeland Security, DHS, is charged with the awesome and complex task of protecting the United States against terrorism. Terrorism is the use of violence to intimidate a government or a society, usually for political or ideological reasons. Now, I know you guys were all born after 2001, which is one of those things that will still always boggle my mind. But 2001, the 9/11 attacks were the kind of thing that were a complete game changer, complete psychological game changer for the United States, very much like what we've got going on now with the coronavirus. 9/11 changed everything. And, it's why if you get on a plane now, you have to take your shoes off when you're going through security. Um, so, yeah, you guys have grown up entirely in a post 9/11 world to really have understood what a difference it's made. You would have had to kind of experience life before September 11th, 2001, which of course you don't have available to you. But the point I want to get across is that 9/11 was a huge, there are these points in American history, world history, where things change, going along on a trajectory, and then you hit something like assassination of John Kennedy or the Challenger explosion or 9/11, and the track of history goes off in a completely different direction. That's what 9/11 was like. Let's see, terrorism is the use of violence to intimidate a government or a society, usually for political or ideological reasons. Congress created the department in 2002, and it became operational in 2003. It is responsible for the coordination and the direction of all anti-terrorist activities of all the public agencies that operate in the field of domestic security, including thousands of police departments, fire departments, emergency medical and search and rescue units, and other disaster response agencies across the country. So the Department of Homeland Security is enormous. The Homeland Security Act of 2002 gives the department major operating responsibilities in 5 specific areas: border and transportation security, infrastructure protection, emergency preparedness and response, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear defense, and information analysis or intelligence. So the Department of Homeland Security is over all of the intelligence community, as well as all these police departments, the nuclear infrastructure of the country, all of these things. The department was built mostly of agencies transferred to it from other cabinet departments. Those agencies include the Secret Service and the newly entitled U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, otherwise known as ICE. These are the people, working on the border, working in detention centers and things like that. And that was transferred to Department of Homeland Security from the Treasury Department. The Coast Guard and the Transportation Security Administration from the Transportation Department. The renamed U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services from the Justice Department, and the Independent Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. FEMA is the group that will come in, say, after a hurricane, bring temporary housing to people who've lost their homes, bring emergency food, things like that. The threat of bioterrorism, the use of such biological agents as smallpox or anthrax as weapons, dramatizes the immensity of the problems facing the Department of Homeland Security. In our time, of course, this book was written 7 years ago, before the current pandemic. But in our time, the coronavirus is another thing that the Department of Homeland Security is going to be very much involved in, even though there's no real proof that that COVID-19 was engineered in a lab or anything like that. But it still presents a great risk to the country, as it does every country around the world, just because of the nature of it, because of the limitations it poses to the populace, to the military, things like that. Okay, so too do these facts. There are nearly 600,000 bridges, 170,000 water systems, and more than 5,000 power plants, 104 of them nuclear, in the United States. There are also 220,000 miles of rail lines, 1.5 million miles of natural gas pipelines, 25,000 miles of inland waterways, and 1,000 harbor channels. Additionally, there are some 470 skyscrapers, each over 500 feet, nearly 19,000 airports, including some 300 major facilities, thousands of stadiums and other large gathering places, and nearly 20,000 miles of international border. So, this really goes to show how many places the Department of Homeland Security has to keep an eye on. If you think about the potential for terrorism, either a bomb going off in a stadium full of people. Of course, we don't have any stadiums full of people now, but in an NFL game or something like that, or sabotage at a nuclear power plant. In fact, there's a nuclear power plant just across the border in Arkansas, over by, what is that called, Lake Dardanelle. Um, so there are nuclear plants around. If that were to be sabotaged, somehow that would be very, very bad news, although we're upwind, not downwind, from what the fallout from there would be. So Department of Homeland Security is over all of these places. It's a huge job, huge department, and that kind of gives you an idea of where we're going with all that. So hope you all are having a good day. Email me if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you Friday. Bye-bye.